Lydia Carter once thrived in the fast-paced world of art curation, her eye for detail and creative vision earning her respect and admiration. But that was before her marriage to Marcus, a powerful real estate developer whose charm slowly twisted into control. Lydia's life now revolved around their 3-year-old son, Ethan, and Marcus's relentless demands for perfection. Under his oppressive grip, her passion for art was all but extinguished. Buried beneath the weight of domestic obligations and Marcus's cold authority, what had once been a partnership of equals had devolved into a performance of submission, where Lydia's thoughts and desires were irrelevant unless they catered to Marcus's rigid expectations. The person she once was, a woman filled with ambition, creativity, and independence, seemed to exist only as a fading memory. The art world she once cherished now felt distant and unreachable, a lost dream she dared not acknowledge. As Lydia prepared to attend Sophie's latest art gallery opening, Marcus's instructions were clear and suffocating. He chose her dress, dictated her makeup, and dismissed her hesitation with a cutting remark about her appearance. Marcus's possessive need for control had grown insidious, disguised as concern or propriety, but Lydia felt its sharpness every day. It was not love that compelled him to manage her so carefully, but fear of losing dominance over her life. The invitation from Sophie, Marcus's sister and a successful gallery owner, was both an opportunity and a threat. Marcus made sure Lydia understood that her role was to smile, support him, and remain silent. To him, the evening was about social status and appearances, about proving his superiority among the city's elite. But for Lydia, the night would become something far different, a breaking point where her voice, long silenced, would finally emerge. As she looked in the mirror, her reflection felt like a stranger's. Lydia forced herself to smile, practicing the expression until it seemed passable. Little did she know, the gallery opening would shatter her carefully constructed facade and set her on a path toward reclaiming her identity. The art gallery buzzed with life, an intoxicating blend of creativity and prestige flowing through the air like fine wine. Sophie Carter's latest exhibition had drawn a dazzling crowd, critics, artists, collectors, and socialites mingling beneath the high ceilings and soft ambient lights of the Manhattan Gallery. Lydia arrived with Marcus by her side, his grip on her elbow firm and possessive, guiding her through the throng with mechanical precision. It was a spectacle of art and wealth, but Lydia felt out of place, her carefully curated appearance masking the hollow ache she carried. Sophie and her wife Charlotte greeted them with warmth and enthusiasm, their smiles genuine and unrestrained. Sophie's success radiated from her, evident in the reverence with which the guests spoke her name. Lydia admired Sophie's boldness and independence, traits she once held herself, but now seemed so distant. As Marcus chatted with clients and associates, Lydia drifted from his side, her gaze lingering on the vibrant canvases adorning the walls. Each piece held a story, raw and unapologetic, a stark contrast to her own life, muted and confined. Sophie approached her, her expression kind and welcoming, pulling Lydia into a brief but heartfelt embrace. "I'm so glad you could make it, Lydia. It's been too long," Sophie said, her voice gentle but with an undercurrent of concern. Lydia forced a smile, nodding as if everything was fine, her gaze slipping past Sophie to where Marcus held court among his business partners. The evening proceeded with speeches and toasts, the air thick with congratulatory praises and superficial charm. Marcus took the microphone with a polished ease, his voice smooth as he spoke of Sophie's success and their family's shared vision of excellence. But his words felt rehearsed, insincere, crafted to enhance his own image rather than celebrate Sophie's achievement. Lydia watched him with detached resignation, his arrogance prickling beneath her skin. Then, to her surprise, Sophie handed her the microphone with a bright smile. "Lydia, why don't you say a few words?" Sophie's request was genuine, her eyes encouraging. But Marcus's gaze was sharp and unforgiving, his posture stiffening at the unexpected gesture. Panic surged through Lydia's veins. Public speaking had never been her strength, especially under the judgmental scrutiny of Marcus's gaze. But something about Sophie's kindness, her unwavering support, broke through the fog of Lydia's doubt. The opportunity to speak felt both terrifying and liberating, a chance to reclaim the voice she had lost long ago. As Lydia's trembling fingers closed around the microphone, the room fell into a heavy silence. Faces turned toward her, waiting, expecting polite remarks that would serve only to uphold Marcus's fragile image. But Lydia's next words would be anything but polite. They would be true. Lydia's fingers tightened around the microphone, her knuckles white against the cool metal. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, each beat echoing the internal struggle between fear and defiance. For years her voice had been suppressed, her thoughts dismissed, her dreams brushed aside as frivolous by Marcus's condescending words. But standing there, surrounded by artists who wore their truth on canvas, Lydia felt something stir within her, a dormant strength, eager to be released. She began hesitantly, her voice soft, uncertain. "Thank you for having me speak. I wasn't expecting this, but weddings, art shows, celebrations, they're all moments we remember, aren't they?" A few polite nods encouraged her to continue. Lydia dared a glance at Marcus, whose eyes were narrowed, his expression a mask of restrained fury. Her fear should have silenced her, but instead it pushed her forward. "I used to love art," Lydia confessed, her voice growing steadier. "It was my passion, my purpose. I curated exhibitions, worked with incredible artists who taught me that art is about truth, about expression. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. I became something else, a decoration, a shadow." Her eyes met Sophie's, whose gaze was filled with compassion, silently urging her on. "I thought marriage was about partnership, about seeing each other for who we are, not just what we can provide. But I've learned that you can spend years thinking you're part of something real, only to wake up and find you are nothing more than a prop in someone else's display." Lydia's voice wavered, but did not break. It's easy to lose yourself when your worth is measured by how well you can fit into someone else's life. When your dreams are dismissed as childish, your ambitions reduced to selfishness. The audience was still, the clinking of glasses and murmur of conversation now absent. Sophie's expression was one of pride and sorrow, her fingers pressed against her lips as if holding back words of comfort. Lydia looked at Marcus again, his jaw clenched so tightly she wondered if it hurt. But his disapproval no longer pierced her. Instead, it fueled her. "I spent so much time trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect accessory, but all it did was strip away the parts of me that mattered most." Her hands trembled slightly, but her grip remained firm. "I'm done hiding behind a smile that's not mine. I'm done being what someone else wants me to be." Lydia's gaze drifted to Sophie and Charlotte, their shared happiness a stark reminder of what true partnership looked like. It wasn't about control or perfection. It was about acceptance and growth. "Sophie, Charlotte, I hope you never lose sight of each other. I hope you never stop celebrating who you are, both individually and together, because that's what love is. It's seeing each other clearly, even when the world tries to blur the lines." Lydia exhaled, her chest heaving as the weight of her own words settled over her. For the first time in years, her voice had been heard. She handed the microphone back to Sophie, her hands clammy but steady. Sophie's eyes shimmered with tears of gratitude and understanding. As Lydia walked away from the stage, the world around her felt brighter, her own truth a beacon cutting through the fog of suppression. Lydia's pulse was still racing as she stepped away from the stage, her chest heaving from the emotional weight she had just unloaded. Sophie embraced her warmly, whispering words of encouragement, but Marcus's reaction was as frigid as ice. His fingers wrapped around her arm, his grip bruising as he guided her away from the gathering. Outside the gallery, beneath the glaring city lights, Marcus's fury erupted. His voice was low but razor-sharp, a controlled anger designed to cut. "What the hell was that, Lydia?" he hissed, his eyes glinting with contempt. "You just humiliated me in front of everyone. Are you insane?" Lydia met his gaze, her own eyes tired but defiant. "I told the truth," she said quietly, the words rolling off her tongue with a newfound courage. Marcus's expression twisted, his lips curling into a sneer. "The truth?" he scoffed. "You made me look like a fool. You've always been ungrateful, Lydia. Do you even realize how much I've done for you?" His accusations fell on deaf ears. For the first time, Lydia wasn't absorbing his cruelty, she was observing it, seeing it for the manipulation it truly was. "Go home," Marcus snapped, releasing her arm with a shove. "We'll talk about this later. And don't expect me to clean up your mess." Lydia nodded numbly, but didn't move. She watched him walk back into the gallery, his shoulders squared, his composure carefully reconstructed for his audience. Left alone on the street, Lydia clutched her purse and inhaled deeply, the crisp night air searing her lungs. She had spoken her truth, but the aftermath left her hollow and raw. Returning to the empty apartment that night, she held Ethan close, his small arms clinging to her in sleep. Lydia knew Marcus's wrath was far from over, but her resolve had begun to crystallize. For the first time, the idea of breaking free felt possible, and the possibility of freedom, no matter how distant, was enough to keep her from shattering. Lydia awoke the next morning with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. The humiliation and anger from the previous night clung to her like residue, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination. After seeing herself through the distorted lens of Marcus's control for so long, Lydia now felt the urge to reclaim her own vision. As Ethan played with his toys on the living room floor, Lydia pulled out her old laptop, dusted off from months of neglect. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the design software she once knew intimately, the interface both familiar and foreign. Memories of late nights creating art, building concepts, and collaborating with fellow curators surfaced like forgotten dreams. For the first time in years, Lydia felt connected to something that was hers. She started small, scouring freelance boards for design projects, submitting applications with a quiet desperation masked as professionalism. Late at night, when Ethan was asleep, Lydia would hunch over her laptop, eyes burning from exhaustion, but heart alight with a sense of purpose. Her first commission was a logo redesign for a local florist, a simple project but one that paid just enough to keep her momentum going. The client's enthusiastic praise felt like validation Lydia hadn't experienced in years. It was proof that she could still create, still matter, beyond Marcus's stifling world. Vanessa, her college friend, had been watching Lydia's progress through sporadic texts and messages. When Lydia finally confided her situation, Vanessa didn't hesitate to offer help. "You were the best designer in our program, Lydia. You didn't deserve to give all that up. And you don't have to keep giving it up," Vanessa had said during a late-night phone call. Her words bolstered Lydia's courage. With Vanessa's connections, Lydia secured a part-time position designing promotional materials for a nonprofit art initiative. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. To avoid Marcus's suspicion, Lydia created a new bank account, stashing away her small but growing earnings. She sold old clothes, reduced household expenses, and saved every dollar she could without drawing attention. The routine was grueling, but it granted her a sense of agency she had long forgotten. Each project completed, each dollar earned, was a small but essential step toward liberation. Lydia's life was no longer defined by Marcus's approval or disapproval. She was reclaiming herself, piece by piece, and with each victory, her resolve grew stronger. For the first time, She dared to envision a future where her worth was not dictated by someone else. Marcus's suspicion grew like a shadow, stretching longer and darker with each passing day. He could sense the shift in Lydia, though he couldn't pinpoint its source. Her newfound energy and determination didn't go unnoticed. She was more focused, her late nights more frequent, her silences not those of submission but contemplation. The change unnerved him. His inquiries started subtly, small questions masked as concern. "You seem tired, Lydia. Are you feeling all right?" But his eyes were sharp, always searching for something he couldn't yet see. When casual surveillance failed to provide answers, Marcus's tactics grew more invasive. He began checking her phone, scrolling through her messages and emails under the guise of keeping their family safe. His fingers flicked through her browsing history, his gaze combing her laptop screen whenever she left it unattended. One morning, Lydia discovered a tracking app installed on her phone, Secure Track. A software meant to monitor location, calls, messages, everything. The violation rattled her, her privacy stripped away with a swipe and a tap. Lydia deleted the app immediately, her hands shaking as she scoured her device for any other breaches. Marcus's control wasn't limited to technology. He monitored her comings and goings with a chilling intensity, questioning every errand, every phone call, every outing that didn't fit his rigid expectations. "Out again today?" he'd ask, his tone casual but his eyes anything but. His presence in the house grew oppressive, like a dark cloud that thickened whenever Lydia's independence glimmered too brightly. And when he couldn't find tangible evidence of her growing freedom, Marcus resorted to manipulation. He called Lydia's mother, planting seeds of doubt and concern. "She's been distant," he lied, his voice smooth and persuasive. "I'm worried she's not coping well. Maybe you should talk to her." When her mother called, her voice full of cautious concern, Lydia's frustration erupted. Marcus wasn't just trying to control her movements, he was trying to control her narrative. He was laying the groundwork to paint her as unstable, unreliable, a mother unfit to care for her own child. The realization sent a chill down her spine. If Marcus was willing to manipulate her family's perception, how far would he go to discredit her entirely? His tightening grip only strengthened Lydia's resolve. She knew she couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Her preparations had to be meticulous, her escape flawless. Because Marcus wasn't just trying to keep her in line, he was trying to erase her completely. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, a day so unremarkable it felt almost cruel that it would be the one to unravel everything. Lydia had been working on a high-profile freelance project, her first substantial commission since she'd reclaimed her career. It was a website redesign for an art nonprofit, a project she'd poured her heart into, balancing late nights and stolen moments during Ethan's naps. A deadline loomed, but Lydia was determined to prove to herself that she was capable, talented, and worthy of something more than Marcus's diminishing approval. That evening, as she prepared to send her final drafts, she opened her laptop to find her files missing. Every painstakingly crafted design, every page of research, gone. Her hands trembled as she clicked through folders, her breathing shallow and rapid. Had she misplaced them, made some careless error? But the more she searched, the clearer the truth became. Marcus had deleted them. She confronted him that night, her voice taut and trembling, words choked with desperation and fury. "You went through my files. You deleted my work." Marcus didn't even bother to deny it. He shrugged, his expression so infuriatingly calm it made Lydia's skin prickle. "You were neglecting your responsibilities," he said coolly. "Neglecting Ethan, neglecting me. It was a distraction you couldn't afford." His arrogance ignited something in Lydia, something fierce and unforgiving. He had crossed a line, not just in invading her privacy, but in actively sabotaging her attempts to rebuild herself. He wasn't just trying to control her, he was actively dismantling her efforts, to reclaim her identity. "You don't get to decide what I can and can't afford," Lydia spat back, her voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. Marcus scoffed, rolling his eyes as if her fury was nothing more than a child's tantrum. "You think you can do this without me? You're nothing, Lydia. No job, no savings, no plan. You need me." But Lydia saw the truth then, clearer than she ever had before. She didn't need him, and whatever it took, she would find a way to prove it. That night she packed an emergency bag for Ethan, hiding essential documents, cash, and clothes in a diaper bag she stored in the car. She wrote down contact numbers, memorized addresses, and rehearsed her escape plan until it felt like second nature. She was done waiting for things to get better. Lydia knew now that Marcus would never change, and she refused to let him rob her of herself any longer. Lydia's escape unfolded in the stillness of early morning, the city draped in a heavy pre-dawn hush. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but the real thing felt both surreal and terrifying. At 3 a.m., she slipped out of bed, her movements deliberate and silent. Marcus lay beside her, his breathing deep and steady, oblivious to the truth unraveling beside him. Lydia gathered the pre-packed diaper bag from the closet, the strap worn from her constant, anxious checking. In her arms, Ethan stirred, but didn't wake, as she wrapped him in a thick blanket, his small body radiating warmth and innocence. Her heart clenched, knowing that whatever future awaited them, it was better than the life she was leaving behind. She crept down the hallway, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a scream in her chest. Outside, the air was crisp and sharp, the chill biting against her skin as she hurried to the car. Lydia buckled Ethan into his car seat with trembling hands, her eyes flickering constantly between him and the shadowed windows of their apartment. The keys slipped from her fingers once, twice, before she finally steadied herself and twisted them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, shattering the silence, and Lydia fought the urge to glance back at the building where Marcus still slept, blissfully unaware of her departure. As she drove through the darkened streets, her breath came in shallow gasps, the magnitude of her decision pressing down on her chest like a weight. Every red light felt like a trap, every passing car a potential threat. But as the city blurred past her windows, Lydia's panic began to ease, replaced by a tentative, fragile sense of relief. She clutched the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, the world outside a blur of headlights and shadows. Her only focus was reaching the shelter, the safe haven she had carefully researched and planned for weeks. At 4:30 a.m., Lydia pulled into the parking lot of the women's shelter. The building was modest but well-kept, a small sanctuary nestled among the city's towering steel and glass. Rosa, the shelter worker she had spoken to on the phone, was waiting at the door, her expression calm and welcoming. "You're safe now," Rosa said softly, guiding Lydia and Ethan inside. As the door clicked shut behind her, Lydia felt her shoulders sag under the weight of exhaustion and relief. For the first time in years, she could breathe freely. The journey ahead would be daunting, filled with legal battles, financial struggles, and emotional scars. But as Lydia cradled Ethan in her arms and settled into their small room, she realized that safety was no longer a dream. It was real, and she was never going back. Weeks passed, and the world Lydia once knew faded into a distant, bitter memory. The shelter became her refuge, a place where she could rebuild without Marcus's shadow looming over her. Rosa's kindness and guidance provided Lydia with resources she hadn't known existed: legal aid, childcare support, and connections to freelance opportunities. With Rosa's help and Vanessa's unwavering encouragement, Lydia gradually established herself as a reputable curator once more. Projects came in steadily, her skill and passion reignited by the freedom to create without restraint. The part-time position Vanessa had connected her with flourished into a steady stream of work, and Lydia's bank account grew with each successful commission. Lydia had found a small, affordable apartment on the city's outskirts. It was nothing like the luxurious home she once shared with Marcus, but it was hers. It was warm, clean, and filled with traces of happiness. Ethan's laughter echoing against the bare walls, Lydia's artwork pinned up like promises of a better future. The childcare Rosa had arranged allowed Lydia to work uninterrupted, her hours now her own to shape. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. Sophie reached out, inviting Lydia to another gallery event, this time not as Marcus's wife, but as herself. Lydia accepted, her heart fluttering with both excitement and nerves. The fear of Marcus's retaliation remained, but it no longer paralyzed her. Her lawyer had already begun the legal process, gathering evidence of Marcus's manipulation and emotional abuse. Lydia knew the battle ahead would be arduous, but she was ready. Standing before her own creations, displayed proudly at Sophie's gallery, Lydia felt a sense of accomplishment she had thought lost forever. This was her beginning, and she would never allow anyone to take it from her again. Lydia stood in the glow of Sophie's gallery, her gaze sweeping across the room where her artwork now hung proudly among pieces from other celebrated artists. The opening was modest compared to Sophie's previous exhibitions, but for Lydia, it was monumental. Her hands no longer trembled when she held the microphone, her voice no longer wavered with fear. "Art is about truth," Lydia began, her words steady and clear. "It's about seeing ourselves and each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She spoke of her journey. Not just the struggle, but the courage it took to reclaim her life from the grip of manipulation and fear. Her eyes briefly found Marcus at the back of the room, his presence a cold, distant shadow, but Lydia no longer shrank beneath his gaze. She had already won by walking away. The applause was genuine, but it was the quiet acceptance within herself that mattered most. The audience's approval was encouraging, but not essential. Lydia's self-worth no longer depended on anyone else's validation. As she handed the microphone back to Sophie, who embraced her with tears in her eyes, Lydia felt the final shackle of her past fall away. She walked out of the gallery that evening, holding Ethan's hand, his laughter bright and innocent against the city's evening hum. The battle for custody would be long, and the scars Marcus had left would take time to heal. But Lydia had reclaimed her identity, her art, and her freedom. She had built a life where she was no longer defined by someone else's expectations. And as the night air brushed against her face, Lydia knew she had found something Marcus could never take away: her own voice. The story of Lydia Carter teaches a powerful lesson about reclaiming one's identity and strength in the face of emotional abuse and control. Lydia's journey highlights the importance of recognizing one's worth and refusing to be diminished by the oppressive expectations of others. Despite Marcus's attempts to undermine her confidence, Lydia discovers that her value does not depend on his approval or anyone else's validation. By rediscovering her passion for art and pursuing her career independently, Lydia demonstrates resilience and courage. The story also emphasizes the importance of supportive friendships and resources. With the help of Vanessa, Rosa, and Sophie, Lydia realizes that help is available if she reaches out. Her success is not solely a result of her own determination, but also the kindness and encouragement of those who genuinely care. Ultimately, Lydia's escape and newfound success prove that freedom is attainable through persistence, planning, and courage. Her growth shows that breaking free from control is not just about physical separation, but about reclaiming one's own voice and purpose. Lydia's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of choosing oneself over fear.